So there's a lot of one author on this list because I read a lot of this author's books this year. So I'm going to list all of the books that I read this year by Brandon Sanderson first, because they were all, except for one, 5-star books for me. And y'all can tell me how annoying I am for how much I love Brandon Sanderson in the comments. So this year I read Elantris, Warbreaker, Mistborn's 1 and 2, so Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages, Skyward, and Starsight. So yeah, 6 of my top books of 2019 are Brandon Sanderson books because I started to read his books and I think I read Way of Kings in 2016 and then Words of Radiance and Oathbringer in 2017 maybe. Somewhere in there, and I have just been working through reading his books, and Elantris, Warbreaker, Well of Ascension, Hero of Ages, Skyward, and Starsight were the books of his that I read this year. If you've watched like almost any video on my channel by now, you'll know that that means they're going to make this best of list. I also read The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds, which is a bind-up of 3 short stories following the character of Stephen Leeds. I actually only gave that 4 stars. I think it's the first time I've ever rated one of Brandon Sanderson's books as 4 stars. There was nothing wrong with it. I think Brandon's long-form work is more solid and stronger than his short-form work. And I just didn't connect to Stephen as a character as strongly as I did to like Vin or Spensa. And that's just what that was. However, I did have 3 5-star reads this year. I had a lot of 3 and 4-star books, which I'm just not going to talk about. I had 3 5-star books this year that I loved that were not by Brandon Sanderson. I will start with the one I read longest ago. The first non-Brandon Sanderson 5-star read of the year, which was Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I have a dedicated review of this on my channel, and I will put it in the cards or link it down below depending on what I remember to do, if anything. I loved Name of the Wind, and the only reason I have not read the second one, Wise Man's Fear, is because I don't own it. And I haven't been able to find it at my used bookstore. And my library doesn't have it. So I'm hoping I get that for Christmas. And if not, I will go out to Barnes & Noble and buy it full price because that is one of the top books I want to read in 2020. Little spoiler for that video that's coming out later is Wise Man's Fear. It's one of the books I want to read in 2020. I loved Name of the Wind and I really liked Gavoth. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I have a full review of this book on my channel. The next 5-star read that I read in 2019 after Name of the Wind was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, which I also have a review of on my channel, but I do not own. I read it as a library book, but that's another one that I'm hoping I get for Christmas because I want to own a copy of that book because I have a feeling I'm going to want to reread it and cry again. That was another book that was a book that like touched me in the deepest parts of my soul that have not been touched by very many books. I loved that book a whole lot. Can't recommend it highly enough. I feel like I don't talk about it enough on my channel because it's not a fantasy book, and I do read mostly fantasy or like detective murder mysteries nowadays because I'm writing a detective murder mystery. And it's neither. So I don't talk about it enough, but I love If We Were Villains so much. It's another one I'm not going to talk a ton about because like I said, I have a review for it on my channel, but it is so good. It's so good. Love it. And then the most recent, actually the most recent 5-star book, because I read it after Starsight. Wow, I could not do that in the viewfinder. I read this after Starsight, which was phenomenal. was Descendant of the Crane. Why does no one talk about this book? I feel like this is the YA fantasy book that deserved to be hyped in 2019, and it wasn't. Maybe it came out in 2018. Either way, this was the book that I don't hear anybody talking about, and this is the YA book that deserved to be hyped over, like, I don't know. I haven't read a lot of other, like, hyped YA books yet. I haven't read Cruel Prince or any of that. So I can't really, like, say if those books deserve to be hyped. But Descendant of the Crane definitely did. I loved it. Featured in all Asian cast, which we don't have nearly enough of in YA fantasy. The romance was one of the very few YA romances that I was, like, rooting for from the very beginning. I was invested in that romance. I loved the sibling dynamics in Descendant of the Crane because the protagonist has a brother, like a full brother, 2 adopted siblings, and then a half brother. And I just loved the dynamics she had with her full brother, her half brother, and then the 2 adopted siblings she has, one of which is the only sister she has. The book has a bunch of twists. It was so good. I loved the world building. I thought it was such, like, this book I went into thinking I was not going to like very much because it has a shockingly low rating on Goodreads, and I loved it, and I thought about it for days and days and days afterwards. Like, so good. The writing was beautiful in my opinion, and I loved the twists, the multiple twists. There was a lot of this plot. It felt like I was like, the author gave me whiplash. This book was so, people do not talk about Descendant of the Crane enough. Like, if you haven't read it yet, go read it and then tell me why nobody talks about this book. Alright, I'm here to hype this book up because I feel like nobody else is doing it, and this is what it deserves. Please read Descendant of the Crane. It was so good. And that was the last non-reread I did for 2020, and like, what a way to go out on a bang, right? The last new read of the year, 5 stars. Thank you for that. I'm currently reading, in case you're wondering, The Silmarillion, Little Women, Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, which I'm reading as an audiobook with Reed. And he's out of town right now, so I don't know if I will finish it before 2020, but I really want to because I am enjoying Golden Sun. So what did I say so far? Silmarillion, Little Women, Golden Sun, and Pride and Prejudice. Those are the books I'm currently reading. Little Women, I should have kept going sooner when I started it, but I wanted to save it for Christmas because once I got into it, I felt like it'd be a really good Christmassy read. The Silmarillion, I lost multiple times over the years, so like the course of 2019, so it's taken me ages to try and read it because I like misplaced my one and only copy of this book multiple times. But whatever, I'm going to finish it by 2020. Pride and Prejudice is my favorite. That or Emma. It's my favorite Jane Austen novel, but I lent Emma out, so I'm rereading Pride and Prejudice. Yeah. And then I already talked about Golden Sun. If I finish those books, I want to also read DragonWorld. This is like a classic fantasy that nobody talks about, and it's got like the best little illustrations in it, like ever. Like, hello? We are not talking about this book, and it's got these great illustrations. Hello? And like, it looks chunky, but like, you can tell that like the print is pretty big and it's got large margins. And like I said, there is like drawings all through in it that like take up like multiple pages. So it's not as long as it looks. And this is the book I will read after all of my rereads in 2020. if I have time. If not, this will be the first read in 2020. I don't know what I just said, and I think I said it wrong, but this will be the first read of 2020 if I do not read it in 2019. So yeah, tell me some of your favorite and least favorite, because I didn't ask in my least favorites video what your favorite and least favorite books of 2019 were. Bonus points if they are YA or adult fantasy, because that is my favorite genre, and I'm trying to read even more of it in 2020. I'm upping my Goodreads goal, and also hoping to write more than I ever have before, so hopefully 2020 will be a good year to start off a good decade. Okay,